Hi, this is Gary, and we're wrapping up our session of Romans as a spiritual formation handbook, if you will. And we've gone through all the meat of the letter that Paul wrote, and we started with how he introduces himself to explain why he has some authority to write this letter and offer his advice and opinions and so on. And then he goes through his whole logical argument, which we followed in sessions 2 through 9 of this teaching. Now we'll take a look at the end. And I think a lot of people gloss over the end of Paul's letters, but I think that they're really important just for an insight into just who these first followers of Jesus were. And a little bit about the organization of these local, what we call churches. They called ecclesias, the small house church fellowships that formed as the gospel spread. Remember, Paul wrote a lot of his letters within 10 to 30 years after Jesus' death and resurrection. So pretty soon afterwards, not a lot of extra time there. And I find that interesting too. But I just as an aside, after we get through all the meat of his arguments and what he's trying to explain and everything, just take a look at these local churches. And so, this section starts with chapter 15, verse 14, and goes through the end of the letter, all the verses of chapter 16, and just take a couple of looks. One of the things. When he starts out, he says, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church at Cenchreae, so that you may welcome her in the Lord, as is fitting for the saints, and to help her in whatever she may require from you, for she has been a benefactor of many and of myself as well. Okay, let's take a look at this. First off, a deacon is a church letter. In the book of Acts, Luke records that at first, when they first organized right after Jesus' resurrection, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and everybody's coming to the apostles, and there's so much work and so much stuff to do, they said, hey, let's appoint some people to be deacons that can take care of, say, the administrative tasks and taking care of the missions, and they had to take care of widows who had lost all means of support. And so they elected 7 deacons at the time, and that became an office in the church. And later on, Paul writes about different offices of the church, and it became, an official, office. So Phoebe, a woman, is a deacon, a church leader, and she's a benefactor of the church, probably meaning she had money, and she used it to support the cause. You can read the rest of these. I'm not going to read all of the names because I can't. But anyway, take above just if you want to skip over the Latin and the Greek names and whatever and look at it, but just get a look of. And if you do this in every one of his letters, you can see it's a great variety of people. Sometimes it's spelled out that they're slaves or slave owners or women or men. And various kinds of things like that. And I think it's just worth noting that the diversity of the people who came because of the resurrection of Jesus and the transformation that people had in their own lives, which attracted people to come and try to get that same feeling of love and joy and peace and generosity and all of the things like that. I often like to point out that, and I spent some time as like a missions director sort of role, kind of. Anyway, I looked at it and said, the church grew dynamically during the Antonine plagues, when Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, and a plague attacked Rome, and all the big shots all left for the hills and everything to get out of the way, and people were dying, and it was terrible. And at that time, the Christians, the Jesus followers, were undergoing another one of those periods of everybody's blaming it on them, and so they've got to hide out. So all the rich and famous and and influential and powerful people left Rome to hide out during the plague, and who came out and helped? It was the Jesus followers, at great risk to themselves, not only because of the purges against Christians, but also because of the plague itself. They put their health at risk, and they came out and they helped people, and people were so impressed with the way these Jesus followers lived that the church grew exponentially during that time. It's sort of an irony, I guess, if you will. But anyway, that's the way they lived. People saw it and they said, I want what they've got. And that's how the church spread. It wasn't because of great preaching. It was because of each and every individual person who lived a fantastic life following Jesus and Jesus' example. So to finish this whole 10-part series on the book of Romans and spiritual formation, I'd like to take a look at that. Just how does he finish with his benediction, and I'll offer it as a benediction for this study. Now to God, who is able to strengthen you according to my gospel and the proclamation of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery that was kept secret for long ages, but is now disclosed, and through the prophetic writings he is made known to all the Gentiles according to the command of the eternal God, to bring about the obedience of faith to the only wise God through Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory forever. Amen. And amen. Thank you for following along. I hope that this helps in your own spiritual formation journey.